Tonight, taking off. Patrols find children and families walking alone for months before landing in the United States.
¿Cuántos tienes? Cuatro. ¿De dónde vienes?
Where cramped and crowded holding cells await. Plus,
he went in the store.
The latest on the mass shooting in Colorado and election integrity.
Even speaking about having honest and morally principled elections causes all kinds of uproars today.
And the former Secretary of State blames the border crisis on President Biden.
A green light has been given by this administration.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The Biden White House attempting to put out the fire over the flood of migrants at the border. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Well, the administration taking heat from both sides of the aisle over the escalating situation it still won't call a crisis. Meanwhile, Republicans criticize the decision to reverse former President Trump's border policies with no plan in place to handle the surge of people coming through. CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson kicks us off with tonight's top story. Abigail?
Well, John, with record numbers of people coming across the southern border, Republicans are criticizing the Biden administration for halting President Trump's border wall. Thousands of unaccompanied children are making the dangerous journey across the southern border.
This is his grandfather's phone number.
Holding on to phone numbers of relatives they hope to find in the U.S.
The administration has all the good intentions. They want to treat the kids in a humane way. But in trying to do this, their good intentions are being overwhelmed by numbers.
Many are ending up in overcrowded detention centers like this one in Donna, Texas, a facility meant to hold 250 people, but currently housing around 4,000.
We have a tremendous flood of people coming towards our border now because that signal's been put out.
Many of the children are being held longer than the 72-hour legal limit, sleeping on floors in the overwhelmed facilities.
These are people literally crossing the border illegally as adults that are being released into the country, or that are 17 years old that they're actually transitioning to another relative that's in the country also illegally and saying show up for a court hearing 2 years from now, which obviously most of those folks don't show up for the hearings.
The White House is tasking Vice President Kamala Harris with leading diplomatic efforts on immigration.
We will collaborate with Mexico and other countries throughout the Western Hemisphere.
Senator James Lankford tells CBN News miles of the border wall are finished, but the gates are incomplete.
All the steel is there, so all it would take is a few days to be able to finish it, and President Biden stopped that. He also stopped the installation of the technology, cameras, lights, ground sensing technology, all of those things he stopped and said, we don't want to install those things anymore. Literally, we've already paid for it. All the materials are there. It's ready to go.
Senate Republicans are planning another trip to the southern border this week, while President Biden says he plans to go at some point, yet has not announced when. John?
All right, Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson. Thanks, Abby. We'll hear now David Brody, CBN News chief political analyst. David, it appears Republicans and Democrats at least agree on one thing about the border situation, and that's that it's unsustainable. David, is there any room for compromise on immigration?
No, John, there isn't. There is a fundamental difference when it comes to how immigration should be handled in the United States, and it all comes down to asylum. All right, so let's just back up for a moment. You have folks coming in from Central American countries into the United States. The Biden administration says for those migrant children, come on in. We're going to put you in a detention facility for a while, and we're going to get you a hearing in a couple of years, as Senator Lankford said, and it's catch and release, right? That's what the Biden administration is doing. Lindsey Graham, a Republican today, came out and said, look, let's do this. Let's put these kids in detention facilities, wait for it, in Mexico and in some of these other countries, Central American countries, until the United States can figure out whether or not they meet the requirements of asylum. That finishes catch and release and it helps in that area. So this is the fundamental difference. So there really is going to be no agreement at this point.
David, to another topic, the nuclear option. Democrats in the Senate are threatening to remove the Senate filibuster to push through what's viewed as partisan legislation like H.R. 1, which is For the People Act, election reform. David, Do you think that they'll actually go through with that?
Well, John, if you asked me this 2 weeks ago, I would have said no. You asked me this today, which you just did, and I say maybe. They are on a track now. There are progressives in the party that are frustrated with this administration. They say, look, you've got the White House, you've got the House, you've got the Senate. Let's go. Let's get rid of the legislative filibuster. So now you would only need 50 votes instead of 60. And oh, by the way, John, it's not just H.R. 1. You can then pass immigration reform the way the Democrats want it. You can pass gun control legislation. You can go down the line and reshape America for generations at this point. That's what progressives want. There is an appetite in the Democrat caucus overall to do it. Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema standing in the way of that right now.
President Biden also saying that even though for years he supported the filibuster, he's now open to the talking filibuster as reform. David, we are now more than 60 days in office with President Biden. He's set to give his first press conference tomorrow. What are you looking to hear and see?
Well, I'll be honest with you, John. Two things. Number one, I'm very curious to see how the media is going to treat Joe Biden. Now, I know you can insert the laugh track there. Everybody will say they're going to treat him with kid gloves. Let's see. Let's give them a chance to actually do their job and ask some tough questions. So I'm curious as to the tenor of the questions. I also think there'll be a TikTok afterwards on this. I don't mean the app TikTok. I'm talking about exactly what happened in terms of how Joe Biden went about calling on reporters, what that list was like, how it was vetted, because I think there's going to be a lot of scrutiny as to who he's calling on and what type of questions are asked. I do expect, obviously, quite a few stumbles from Joe Biden, but the bar couldn't be any lower for Joe Biden. Unfortunately, that's not a good thing for him.
David, thank you for clarifying TikTok, not the app, but actually what happens tomorrow.
Hey, John, I'm hip. Don't play around with me.
You are pretty hip. CBN's David Brody, our chief political analyst. Thanks so much for your perspective, David.
Thanks, John.
Well, tonight we are learning more about the victims of the Colorado mass shooting. As CBN's Dale Hurd reports, their family and friends are sharing their stories.
Outside the King Soopers grocery store in Boulder, a memorial is growing by the hour as this community tries to deal with the tragedy and multiple families prepare to lay the victims of Monday's mass shooting to rest. 61-year-old Kevin Mahoney had just walked his daughter down the wedding aisle last summer and was about to become a grandfather. 51-year-old Terry Leaker had worked at the King Soopers grocery store for 31 years. 20-year-old Denny Stong had dreamed of becoming an airline pilot. 25-year-old Ricky Oles was a manager at the grocery store.
She's giggly and bubbly and just you couldn't be sad around her.
Her Aunt Lori watched the incident unfold in real time on a live stream.
We're watching it on my phone as the police are just getting there. And, we're horrified.
59-year-old Susan Fountain was known as a kind and talented actress. 62-year-old Lynn Murray was a retired mother of two. 65-year-old Jody Waters was a grandmother who worked in a clothing boutique. A cousin of 49-year-old Trelona Bartkowiak said she was the backbone of her family. Officer Eric Talley was an 11-year veteran with the Boulder Police Department. He rushed to the scene of the shooting and died from a gunshot to the head.
This officer had 7 children, ages 5 to 18. I just had that officer's whole family in my office 2 weeks ago to give him an award.
My son gave his life to save those people at the King Soopers. He gave it all, and the hate still continues.
Talley's police cruiser parked outside the police station was draped in flowers as a memorial. Also dead, 23-year-old Nevin Stanisic, whose family fled the war in Bosnia and was described as a man of faith. The shooter has been identified as Syrian-born Ahmad al-Issa. Posts from his now-deleted Facebook page show he hated Donald Trump and believed Trump's supporters had hacked his phone. However, there are reports he's not told police why he started killing people. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Dale. Here with us now is Amy Swearer, legal fellow at the Meese Center for Legal and Judicial Studies at the Heritage Foundation. Amy, welcome to Faith Nation. We just heard those devastating accounts of personal tragedy and loss. You know, every time this seems to happen, there's inevitably renewed talk of gun control. Amy, you testified at a hearing on the Hill yesterday over common sense steps to reduce gun violence. Do you believe there are places where Republicans and Democrats can come together?
Well, I think there are absolutely places where Democrats and Republicans can come together, including with some legislation that would actually play a significant role in helping to stop some of these mass public shootings. Unfortunately, Colorado had in place a red flag law at the time, and it seems that was not used in this situation, and it might well have been the case that it could have and should have been. But when we're talking about things like time-limited, targeted interventions to intervene when we start seeing the first signs that someone is becoming a danger to themselves or others, assuming that we can write those laws in such a way that there's significant due process, that those people aren't just having their rights summarily stripped from them, that seems to be a real basis for bipartisan support.
Along those lines, in your testimony, you said that even with warning signs, mass shooters are generally able to pass background checks to buy guns. Amy, would strengthening background check laws prevent that?
Well, not necessarily. So when we're talking about mass public shooters in particular, again, the problem is that they don't actually have either criminal or mental health histories that would have them flagged in a background check. Now, there are a very limited set of scenarios where a person can legally procure a firearm without going through a background check. I think one of the most commonly talked about ones are this idea of publicly advertised private sales within parties of the same state. We know it's not really how criminals largely get their guns. It's certainly not how most mass shooters get their guns, but it is worth at least addressing. I think the problem, as I talked about at the hearing yesterday, is the way that the law is written. It actually goes far beyond that and would criminalize a lot of other common sense, low-risk transfers.
So I think you touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and ask again. Is there room for compromise on background check legislation?
Well, I think there can be, because again, at the core, that this idea of arms list sales, for example, these publicly advertised private sales to strangers, where you basically don't have any knowledge as to who they are as a person, whether they may or may not be prohibited. I think there's room to work for that limited scenario. But once you start getting beyond that into criminalizing any transfer, whether it's between friends or family members who know that they're not prohibited persons, temporarily surrendering your firearms without going through a background check because you're going through a rough mental health patch, those sorts of things absolutely should not be criminalized. And so if we stay away from that set of policies and just focus on the more limited publicly advertised sales, I think there is definitely room to work there.
Amy, we only have a few seconds left, so if you can, in a sentence or two. Republicans, we know, were open to discussing background checks and red flag laws back in 2019. Is this go-around any different?
Well, so I know in 2013, when it focused just on publicly advertised private sales, there was significant support for that. But again, This is a very different law.
All right. Amy Swearer with the Heritage Foundation, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Coming up, the Senate takes up election law reform, what Republicans say it does not address, when we return.
Having sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire. Monday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Thursday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Welcome back. A bill recently passed in the United States House has the potential to make or break the Senate. H.R. 1, also known as For the People Act, is so important to some Democrats that many are willing to remove the Senate filibuster to pass the election law overhaul. Democrats say the bill is critical to counteract stricter voting requirements enacted in many states.
If one political party believes that when you lose an election, the answer isn't to win more votes, but rather to try and prevent the other side from voting, we have an existential threat to democracy on our hands.
Republicans claim H.R. 1 would impose federal control over state-run elections and that it does not address election security or fraud.
This legislation would forcibly rewrite the election laws of all 50 states from here in Washington. Popular policies like voter ID requirements would be banned unless states neutered them with loopholes.
Well, some big names in conservative circles tackled that topic at the first ever conference for election integrity at Regent University. CBN's Paul Strand has more.
Regent's new dean for the School of Government kicked off the conference. Former Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann said America can't allow national elections to be stolen.
Without an honest count of votes, we won't have a way to remove leaders that we don't want. And we won't have a way to get rid of laws that we don't like. Instead, a permanent group of elites will ensure their own continued power. And that will require you and me to live the way the elites tell us to.
Keynote speaker Ben Carson said he's appalled how people are being shut up now if they want any fraud wiped out going forward.
Even speaking about having honest and morally principled elections causes all kinds of uproars today.
A panel of election experts ripped into H.R. 1, a bill the Senate's now considering that detractors say would be a federal takeover of state election laws.
It basically throws open the vote to almost anyone who wants to pretend that they have a right to vote, who can vote twice, who can vote from out of state, who can vote if they're dead. Look, I believe in respect for our dead, but I also believe that we should have no representation without respiration.
It's just one bad provision after another. The whole intent of this law appears to be to make it easy to cheat, to make it easy to get away with it, and to make it almost impossible to detect or prosecute.
I like to say that H.R. 1 is unworkable, it's immoral, and it's unconstitutional. Sometimes I refer to that as the swamp trifecta. That's Washington, D.C. for you.
It's all a partisan power grab. There's not a single good idea in this entire 900-page bill.
And political commentator Mark Stein worries H.R. 1 could permanently warp American elections and democracy.
This is a recipe for a permanent one-party swamp, which is the ruling party and a controlled opposition in permanent minority status.
Stein suggests half the country permanently disenfranchised could be a powder keg.
Where we have groups of people who simply do not want to be in the same country with the other group.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Paul. When we come back, Trump's former Secretary of State is weighing in on President Biden's border policy. See what he has to say when we come back.
Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new CBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new CBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new CBN app.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
Wednesday at 3 on the CBN News Channel.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
Welcome back. Not in America's best interest. That's how former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is describing President Biden's response to what's happening at the southern border. CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody had a wide-ranging interview with him just a few blocks up over at Just the News.
Who better to opine on national security than the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, back with us on the water cooler. Mr. Secretary, great to see you, sir.
Great to be with you today.
Well, look, today the White House said the State Department and other agencies are using like Facebook and Instagram and, yes, even a coloring book campaign to dissuade illegal immigrants, I kid you not, from coming to the border. Your thoughts on this?
You know, those immigrants are looking to the north, and they're talking to their friends, they're WhatsApping with their family members, their cousins, people who came before them, and they're being told that this is welcoming, that you can come, that it's likely you're going to be able to come here, make your asylum claim, and stay in the United States. It doesn't matter what we put in a coloring book. That message to those people is going to be that a green light has been given by this administration to violate American sovereignty, and them to make the enormously dangerous trek from El Salvador, from Honduras, from Guatemala into the United States. This is multiple crises. People say, is this a crisis? No, it is multiple crises. It is an American national security crisis. It is a crisis for American sovereignty, and it is a humanitarian crisis of epic proportions that benefits only the cartels inside of Mexico.
I want to ask you a little bit about vaccines and diplomacy. We've been hearing this a lot. Vaccine diplomacy, something along the lines of 27% of the world's vaccines are here in the United States. And, you know, I know a lot of Democrats, a lot of liberals say, you know, give it all out. Give a lot of it out to certain different countries around the world. What is your view on this vaccine diplomacy that we're hearing?
Well, what we've shown during this last year is that capitalism works, that risk-taking works, that investing in these businesses and allowing them their own creative capacity to come up with a solution has delivered the world a set of vaccines that is ultimately going to solve this problem that came from Wuhan, China, that was foisted upon us by a Chinese Communist Party that didn't give a rip about global epidemics. And so the United States has a responsibility to make sure that we first get this right for our own people, right? We talked about this in a way that was shorthand. We talked about America first. The United States has a responsibility to ensure that we follow all the international protocols, that we observe normal commercial practices, but we should do our best to make sure that we get America to where it needs to be, that there's enough vaccines for ourselves, and then we will turn our attention to making sure we deliver this everywhere and always all across the world. The American people, the most generous people on the face of the planet, and I am confident that it will be America and American efforts and American-led vaccine efforts that deliver a solution to the Wuhan virus all across the globe.
to combine vaccines and immigration. Are you concerned a little bit about what the Biden administration is doing down there in terms of illegal immigrants and health risks and safety as it relates to COVID-19 protocol? It seems like there might be a message down there.
David, I'll combine all three things we've been talking about. It's an immigration problem. It's a problem with respect to people coming in who may well have COVID-19. And this is a problem of China bringing fentanyl across our borders as well. These are all come together in this place along our southern border. It's why the work that we did, and it took us a long time, it took us many months of complex negotiations with the Mexican government, with the government of the Central American countries, to deliver an outcome that was right outcome for America, and frankly, the right outcome for those countries too. And to have undone that without thinking that this would happen precisely the way I could have predicted would have happened if you undid our policies, has led to an enormous tragedy on our southern border.
Mike Pompeo, a lot of people interested in what you have to say as you move forward in your career. We really appreciate you coming here on the Water Cooler. Thanks so much.
David, thank you so much. Have a good day.
Coming up, from Kitty Hawk to the Red Planet, the surprise package on board NASA's most recent space mission.
Are you suffering from feeling tired or worn out during the day? Can you not turn off your brain at night? You are not alone. Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Bruce, the sleep doctor, and I've partnered with the Christian Broadcasting Network, and we're going to bring you some unbelievable information that you can use tonight to get a better night's rest.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Protect Your Sleep today.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes too, and so much more. Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Finally tonight, NASA is gearing up for the first powered and controlled flight on another planet by paying tribute to the first powered and controlled flight right here on Earth. NASA's Ingenuity helicopter landed on Mars with a piece of fabric from the Wright brothers' aircraft tucked under its solar panel. The life of the fabric extends all the way back to 1903, when Orville and Wilbur Wright took to the air in the first historic flight. Now, the fabric represents modern ingenuity behind NASA's most recent mission. The 4-pound helicopter is an experiment that could open doors for new forms of space exploration in the future. Well, that does it for tonight's Faith Nation. Thanks so much for watching. We hope to see you right back here tomorrow.